Hey there, and welcome back to the Total Potential Podcast. Cole here with Jake today, and super excited to joining us is my friend Brad Ritter, and Brad is the author of a new book called School of Grit. He's also an unbeatable mind coach, like Jake and myself are, and we're so happy to have you here today, Brad. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Cole. Thanks, Jake. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So before we dig into the book and the experience that goes into, give us a little bit of insight into just your background and how you ever even got to a place where this book came to be.
That's the big question I often get asked. So yeah, it's great. Let me give you a little background. So I'm 41 and I've been married almost 16 years. I've got two kids. So my oldest is Hallie. She's 10 right now, and my youngest is Brody. He's 7. I think we stopped at 2 because we had one each. And then it was the whole, do we want to play man to man or do we want to play zone when it comes to a family? So we got 2. We're very fortunate. They're all healthy and love it. And I think what drew me to actually didn't have an intention of writing a book. Quite frankly, I never thought I'd be able to write a book or never consider myself an author. Like who would want to hear what I have to say, right? Or who likes hearing my voice? And but what I learned is I think it's some people are drawn to people that they can relate to, and just my background is that I've been in corporate America pretty much ever since I got out of college. So that was back in 2002. And I've worked in sales or consulting for about a handful of companies during that time, and been fortunate enough to work out of my house, which is really nice. But sort of had I don't know if you want to call it like a midlife crisis or whatever, but I was about 35 when that happened, 34 or 35, and just really started asking myself some deep questions. There wasn't anything traumatic that happened. There wasn't a specific event that I could point to and say, yeah, that's what really, got me into writing the book. But I just knew that by all accounts of success, of what people normally think of success, whether it's money or, family or having a nice house and nice toys and nice things, like I was quote unquote successful, but just sort of empty inside. And I think that emptiness was that I knew it, like I wasn't living out my full potential. Like I was put on this planet to do something. I just didn't know what, and I didn't know how. And I had gotten too comfortable, essentially, call it golden handcuffs or whatever. But I sought out comfort. And a lot of times when you join or you work for a company, you get that nice salary, or you get a little bit of a merit bonus every year. It's that's the hook, right? To keep you in, or the 401k match, company car, whatever, right? And I have that. And that's great. But at the end of the day, is that really what I was put on this planet to do? And I started asking myself those questions. And that's what really took me from my 35-year-old sort of selfish self, if that's such a thing. But yeah, I was pretty selfish back then. It was mostly about me and, what others could do for me. I don't know why that was, but it is what it is. And decided to shake some things up, decided to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think, Jake, I'm interested to hear what lands for you, but that's actually how this whole thing started for Jake and I with Total Potential, was exactly what you said, which is that we kind of checked the boxes of all those things that meant you were successful.
Mm-hmm.
And then we looked at them and we're like, okay, some of these are interesting. Some, like the family, right? Like, okay, I love that. But like, it wasn't just getting the kids or getting the right person as your spouse. Like there's so much more after that. I don't know, Jake, what did you think when Brad said that? I'm like, feel like I'm hearing Jake talking when he said that.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because we've talked about this a lot of times, but Brad, you get kind of caught in these boxes of what we, I guess, have been conditioned to think is, like you had said, success, or, whatever these kind of these parameters that we have built around our lives that maybe we didn't build for ourselves, and then you kind of get in this phase where you're just kind of head down grinding, and everything, like you said, is super comfortable. But then all of a sudden you wake up that one day and you're like, wait a second here, is this really why, like you said, why I'm on this earth, and it's,
Mm-hmm.
um, hopefully everybody has that happen to them, because it can be scary, I guess. But then once you start taking steps into that discomfort land, you realize that, man, this is actually a pretty cool place to live.
And that's where the growth happens, right? Is when you're uncomfortable and you're doing things. And I saw some meme or something the other day, and I was like, man, how true. And it said something like, don't be afraid to fail at something new. And
Yeah.
I just think like I'd lost that love for learning and trying new things and getting better. And yeah, so absolutely, I could totally relate to your guys' stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So then, Brad, I mean, I know this story, but I want the listeners to know this story of how you decided to go to the world's like hardest training ground.
All
So you go
right.
from your corporate job to training like a Navy SEAL. How does one do that?
Straight to the meat and potatoes. Let's do this. Yeah, so love it. Yeah, so I was comfortable, right? And I think sometimes we ask ourselves questions, or things will happen in our life, or I don't know, faith wise, but like I believe in God. So, or whether it's God maybe plants, a question to you, and it's up to you to kind of walk through that door. If you get presented with certain opportunities, and you got to be able to listen. And if it speaks to you, like there's probably good reason for it. You should probably listen to your intuition. So that's what I did when I was 34, 35. Like I said earlier, I was at home. It was a day like any other day. I was getting ready for work. In fact, I was shaving. I was in my master bathroom. I was looking at myself in the mirror. My wife had gone on to school. Kids had gotten on the bus. I was getting ready to go meet a client, and the questions started entering my head, and they're common questions. Who am I? What's my purpose? What am I here to do? Right? We've all probably asked ourselves these questions at one point or another. But this time, for some reason, it wouldn't go away. Like the questions were pretty loud. Like sometimes they'd been pretty soft, but this time they were loud, like in my face loud. It was the weirdest thing. And I decided to finally listen to those voices. And I said, okay, there's something going on here. I need to take the proper time to really investigate this. So I actually called my customer, said, hey, I'm not going to make it. And I stayed home from work. So that was my first step. Was I just like, hey, this is pretty important stuff that I think's happening. I'm listening to it. I need to listen to my body. I need to listen to what's going on internally. And I hadn't really done that before. The old me would have just been like, whatever, just
Yeah.
power on through, right, and forget about it. But I'm glad I listened to myself, because I stayed home, like I said, started doing some research. And what do most people do when they do research? They go online, right? They do a Google search. So that's what I did. I did a Google search. I typed in, passion, and there's like 27 million hits or something like that.
Oh,
And so I spent like the next few hours just reading all the different blogs and articles and different authors, because as you can imagine, there's just tons of information out there about, hey, how do you find your passion and purpose and all that stuff. And at the end of it, I wasn't any closer. In fact, I was probably even more confused, right? I had analysis paralysis at that point. But I'm a big believer in video. Like I love looking at video. That's how I like to consume media. So I went to YouTube and I typed in passion, and a lady who wrote a book called Grit popped up on my YouTube feed, and her name's Angela Duckworth, and she's a psychologist. And I saw her TED Talk, and so I'll often ask this. I'll ask you guys now: have you ever seen a TED Talk that changed your life, or any video that changed your life? Have you?
Yes,
yeah,
for sure.
And you remember those videos, right? That's how this video was. And it was only 6 minutes, but Angela's delivering a TED Talk on grit. I'm like, grit? Oh, I like that name, And she goes on to say, in all her research, And I mean, she researched, West Point candidates. She researched, very stressful sales industries, professional teams. She found that time and time again, grit is the number one indicator and predictor of success in life. And it's something that you can actually grow. And I was like, interesting. So I went to her website, and she gives this grit scale or grit test that you can take. It's only 10 questions. You can take it right now, and you get instant feedback. It'll probably only take you 5 minutes to go through it. So I took her test, and on a scale of 1 to 5, I think it was, 5 being like the grittiest person known to man and 0 having no grit, I think I scored like a 2.2, which it said was grittier than like 20% of most people that take the survey. And I'm a pretty competitive guy. I didn't play professional sports, but I played in high school and did some other stuff. So very, very competitive. And that just didn't sit well with me. And I said, there's something, I guess I'm just not gritty, was what I came up with. So I bought her book and read it cover to cover. And there were several things that she shared, but one of the things that sat with me was that you can grow grit from the inside out and you can grow it from the outside in. Sometimes you can do both at the same time. And I decided, okay, I want to grow grit from the outside in, meaning I want some sort of like external motivator or external force to like really reveal my character and just burn through all that comfort and all that good stuff. So I went back, did my research again, went back to YouTube, and this time I typed in world's toughest training. And that's when another video that changed my life popped up. So there's really 2 videos and that changed my life. The first one was Angela Duckworth's grit video. And the second is a video by Mark Divine, who I know you both know very well. And he's the creator of SEAL Fit and Unbeatable Mind. And this particular video, he was addressing a class, and he calls this camp Kokoro Camp. It's based on Navy SEAL training, which for some of the listeners, if they're not that familiar with Navy SEAL training, there's at a certain week, they call it Hell Week. And basically the candidates are up for, I think it's like 5 or 6 days straight with 0 sleep. And it's just a constant mental, physical, emotional grind. And basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to weed everybody out and see who really wants to be there before they actually start training you tactically. And Mark Divine created this Kokoro Camp to be modeled after that, except it's only 50 hours. Okay. It's not the full, 5 or 6, it's 50 hours straight of nonstop fun, let's say. And the video, it's Mark addressing a class. He's got his sunglasses on. He's looking chiseled, arms crossed because he's in command. He's addressing all these people who show up. And he says, rejoice in adversity. Rejoice in adversity. How do we grow as human beings? It's through adversity. Warriors seek out the severest of schools to test their character. Welcome to the severest of schools. And cool I got goosebumps. I still have goosebumps when I say that because it meant so much to me at that time. The hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I said, I got to do that. Like, I think that's going to give me the answers that I'm looking for. I want to be pushed. I want to embrace adversity, and I'm scared to death. Like, I was so scared to even fill out my application to be accepted into the program. But I knew there was something there. And that's how I ended up at Kokoro Camp.
That's so awesome. I just question for you. What like physically, as far as like your exercise routine before that, like what were you doing?
I laugh because I've always been somewhat physical, but I followed the beach body program. Let's say, like, it was, I might do 20 minutes on the treadmill and then, do some bicep curls and all that good stuff. And I'm laughing because while it's good to do something, right? I'm a big believer in movement, whatever your jam is. I mean, that's great. But in order to train for this, I had to completely change everything. So I had started getting into CrossFit a little bit, but part of the training I did Seal Fit, which is the sister company of Unbeatable Mind that Mark that owns. They have programming, and that programming, they have specific programming that's geared towards he calls it operator WODs, but they're geared towards people who are going into special forces, military, police, all that good stuff. But it's a lot of functional movement, and they're gnarly workouts. They are to complete a full Seal Fit op WOD, you're looking at like 2 to 2.5 hours on average, which is a lot. And a lot of people don't have that kind of time. So, I mean, that's another thing, right? You got to invest the time. But that's sort of how my training involved. It wasn't really working out anymore. I didn't view it as working out. I think that's an important distinction too. Like you've got working out and you've got training. To me, working out is like, okay, I just want to go break a sweat or whatever. I don't really have a purpose. Training is you're training specifically for a purpose, which is a big distinction to me. So I went from working out really to look good. Let's face it, look good on the beach or something with your shirt off or in those family pictures, right? To I'm training for a specific purpose. Two completely different thinking and two completely different mentalities too when you're approaching it that way.
Yeah, I love that, and that's why I was just curious because, like you had said before, kind of stepping out of that comfort zone. So that was probably a big leap right there, right? Of like, man, I've been going to Lifetime, just doing some bicep curls to holy crap, it's time to.
Dude, I was going to Loft Fitness. I mean, doing my thing.
Yeah.
And it was. I just you have to shift it up and do more functional workouts and lots of pull-ups and body weight stuff, right? Like I had probably neglected a lot of the body weight stuff, but at the end of the day, when you go to do a crucible like Kokoro Camp, like doesn't matter how much you bench or how much you can squat or deadlift, like it matters how much you can run or move with weight.
Yeah.
And we're talking for hours and hours on end. This isn't like a 20-minute sprint and you're done. So
Brad, what's the thought or sensation, like you arrive at Kokoro Camp and like what's going through your mind before you step out there?
You're taking me back. So I had, through training, I trained about 6 months, and I trained the hardest I had ever trained in my life. I mean, I was in tip-top shape. And so I knew from a training standpoint, I don't think I really could have done much more. I mean, did I miss some workouts every now and again? Yeah, that's life. But I mean, I was routine, and it requires an element of selfishness too, to train like that. I equate it to, if you've ever known people who are triathletes, right? They're always training. They always are, but that's what they're into. And that you have to put in the time, there's no substitute for that. You can't fake that. So I knew I'd put in the training. What I didn't put in was the mental toughness, emotional resilience training. So when I got there, I mean, I didn't know anybody. Immediately, what I noticed was I am one of the oldest dudes here, and I'm also one of the tallest. And I think I'm the only one with gray hair. At least that's at that time. Yeah. So you can see me. I have some gray hair. It was mostly black by then, but the gray was coming in. And that was my immediate thing. And then you start. It's no different than anywhere you go. You start I don't know why. You just instantly start comparing yourself to other people. Well, that person looks way stronger than I am, or look how tall that person is, or hey, look how short that person is. They have no chance, right? I don't know why, but you just start comparing yourself. And there was a sign that greeted us and said something like, "Welcome to the party. Stay off the grinder," which I didn't even know what a grinder was. I know what it is now. Grinder is just like it's asphalt or pavement where they grind you down by doing hours and hours of calisthenics is what it is.
Yeah.
And then it said form up on a line, single file line. So we're formed up, and I put my hands, I crossed my arms like this, and the guy next to me, he's like, "Hey, don't cross your arms." I said, "Why?" He's like, well, that's a sign of authority, and they're going to really come down on you hard if you do that. And I was like, oh, shoot, my bad. So I put my hands in my pockets. And he's like, don't do that either. And I'm like, what? Why not? He's like, that shows laziness. And I said, okay, well, where can I put my hands? He's like, put them to the side or put them, behind you, like you're standing at attention. And I was like, hoo-yah. All right. So that was literally lesson number 1. 5 minutes I got there, and I was like, I'm already messing up. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yep. I have another story in there too, if you want to hear it.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right. I do share this in the book. So it just shows you how social media can get you in trouble as well. And so I live in Indiana, and getting to California, unfortunately, there's just wasn't a direct flight. So lots of travel. I got in a day before this thing kicked off, stayed with a buddy of mine, fortunately. And Adam Huey, if you're listening, thanks for putting me up, because you really saved me, man. But so I'm walking the beach the day before. I think he's at work, and I'm loving it, right? It's California. It's like my first time in California, walking the beach. And I'm like, I got to get in the ocean. And I hop in the ocean. I'm like, holy crap, it's freezing in here, right? Because I usually vacation in Florida, Gulf of Mexico, where it's 75, 80. I'm like, well, no wonder no one in here is swimming, and they all got wetsuits on. I'm the only one, just shorts, and that's it. So that was the first thing I noticed, was the water is really, really cold. And I took a selfie of myself, which I never do. Like, I have a social media account, but I'm not very active at all. But I took a picture of myself, and I posted it on Facebook. I think the caption was like something like T minus, 18 hours until this crucible, or something like that. And somebody I work with saw that post. And at the time, she worked in human resources or something like that. But she responded, and she said, hey, Brad, good to see you're there. I have a friend there too. And she highlighted or pinged his name, on Facebook or whatever. And his name also happens to be Brad. So Brad McLeod, if you've heard that name, he's a former Navy SEAL. He runs an awesome program called SEAL Grinder PT that I use to help train. And she pinged him on Facebook and said, hey, my somebody I work with is going to be out there for the same thing. And I was like, I don't know if that's a good thing now that people know that I'm coming, especially someone who's actually coaching, because Brad McLeod was a coach out there, a cadre at Kokoro Camp. So I had seen that, right? So picture now that I'm back in line. I had just gotten the rules on where to put my arms, where to put my hands. And they start taking people 2 at a time. I have no idea where they're going. I have no idea what's going on, right? It's like, here we go. And I'm towards the end. And when you can just feel, I was like, somebody's coming behind me. I know they are. Like I could see their shadow, or you just feel it. So I felt it. And it was a guy, and he puts in front of me my application. So to go to this camp, you have to fill out an application. There's minimum standards you have to meet physically. And then the other thing you have to do is you have to write why you're doing this. Like, why are you doing this? Because that's a big thing out there, and really with anything you're doing that you're passionate about, you got to know why you're doing it. Otherwise, it's going to be very easy to quit when times get tough. So it's my application. He says, Ritter, because our names are on stenciled on the shirt. He said, Ritter, is this you? And I said, Hoo-yah, coach. And he showed me his phone. He's like, did you post this on Facebook?
Oh, no.
I said, Hoo-yah, coach. He's like, do you know who I am? And I looked around, and I had seen Brad, Coach McLeod, on videos and things. So I knew what he looked like. I'd never met him in person. I said, yes, Hoo-yah, coach. I do know who you are. And he's like, do you think that's a good thing? And I said, no. He's like, extra sauce for you this weekend.
Oh, no.
Extra sauce. So that was my first 10 minutes there. I was thinking, I am in big trouble. Big trouble,
Oh, man.
That's so crazy. It's awesome that because you obviously the nerves and everything, just doing something like that. It's just the human nature of it. And then to have it start off like that, where you're like, oh man, now this coach kind of has my number. I don't really know how to act.
Exactly. You know how
Yeah.
that is. It's yeah, you want to be like the gray man is what they say, right? You just kind of want to blend in, not be, no, there was none of that. I was absolutely noticed. I was targeted right away.
Yeah. That's
That's
crazy.
funny. So Brad, the first 10 minutes are kind of gnarly to start out. And then
Absolutely.
so then you still have 49 hours and 50 minutes left to go.
Thereabouts.
So what were some of like the highs? I'm guessing there's some lows that you had to kind of grind through, but what are some of the
Yeah.
highs from that experience?
Yeah. Just from the overall experience, the highs were I I had mentally in my head, I had sort of micro gold this whole thing, right? Because when you've got 50 plus hours, you got to be up. I told myself, okay, one, I want to survive breakout. And I'll tell you what that is in just a second. And then the second is I want to make it through the first 24 because I felt like if I could see the sun come up and make it through a full day, 24 hours, I could do another 24, right? Kind of like running a race. Like when you're kind of over that halfway mark, it's like, all right, I'm halfway. I can do this. I can do this. So the first one was breakout. Some people refer to it as a shark attack as well. But what they're trying to simulate is battle, honestly. Just pure chaos. Can you take command? So just picture, we had 45 people start. We're all lined up. And all these cadre just descend upon us, and they start getting out the hoses and the loud horns and, making us do every calisthenic you can possibly think of. And I mean, honestly, after 10, 20 minutes, everybody's broken down. You're hurting. It's hard to hear. You don't know who you should be following. You've got people barking orders all over you. I remember I was doing flutter kicks. I was on my back. I mean, we did so many flutter kicks. It was unbelievable. I obviously didn't do enough in training. But I was gassed. I was gassed. And that was one of the things you couldn't do. Like you weren't allowed to put your feet on the grinder, right? On the pavement. And I must have had this smirk on my face, and in walks, or I'm sorry, above me as I'm looking up at the sky, I see this silhouette, and it's my mentor. It's Mark Devine, right? We had never met each other, but I'd been following him, and I'm a firm believer you can have mentors and they don't even know it, right?
Yeah.
They're the power of video or book or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the guy, right? Like he gave one of the biggest speeches, right? Back to that video that really inspired me and changed my life. I'm like, he's here. And he's like, Ritter. I'm like, how's he know my last name? Oh yeah, it's stenciled on there. I'm like, who y'all, coach? He says, he's drinking Gatorade, I think it was. He's like, you look thirsty. He's like, do you want some Gatorade? I'm like, who y'all, coach? He's like, well, too bad, because you're not putting out. And I wasn't breathing. Like I hadn't really been concentrating on my breathing. Like I was holding my breath. And he's like, you better learn to breathe or you're not going to make it through this weekend, So again, back to like, I'm already messing up, right? Within the first hour, like I feel like I'm just standing out. But back to your question, Cole, of the highlights was, I didn't have a watch. Obviously we weren't allowed to have watches, but I'm guessing it lasted 2.5, 3 hours. So just imagine doing 2.5, 3 hours of the gnarliest intensive calisthenics you've ever done, all while being hosed down with water and yelled at and having people stand on your stomach to engage your abs and, gnarly stuff like that. We finally made it. And I didn't know people had dropped, right? Because you could drop on request. And I look over to my right, we had 5 people quit within that was the first evolution. Evolution. Yeah, I look over and that was one of the happiest mentally times that I had because that was my first goal. I was like, I just want to survive breakout because I knew it was coming. I mean, you can go on and see the videos. You kind of know what to expect, at least from the initial onslaught. Now they change it every class, but there's going to be a breakout. And I think pretty sure about just about all the special forces, training does something similar. So that was the first real good feeling I had. And there weren't a lot of them. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. There were a lot of lows and stuff like that. But the second one, outside of actually securing it and making it through, obviously that was super joyous and all that. But right before that, it was making it through the first 24 hours, because we had been through, I mean, just, it was unbelievable looking back at all the stuff we had been through, and just something about seeing that sun come up and just feeling the warmth from those rays, just, hitting your skin, and it just lights you up. It gives you instant energy. Yeah. But then they know that too. And that's when the night cadre go and the day cadre come back in, and it's like, oh no, I got to deal with you again. So, it's, you might feel good, but it's not going to be for very long.
I got to imagine though, Brad, when you're in that event, just having those small little wins, or like those small little goals accomplished, that's got to be kind of the fuel that keeps you going, right?
It's that, Jake. And then one of the big things I learned out there, again, going back to, I called myself selfish, which I was in my 20s and early 30s, is when you do an event like that, it's unique, and it's unlike anything else out there that I've ever come across in the world, in the fact that you do it as a team. Because there's a lot of like gnarly stuff out there you can sign up and do just by yourself, and that's very hard to do. Hey, I'll be the first one to tell you, when it's just you and you're out there and you're running like a 50K or whatever, and it's just you, and it's tough. Your mind can go to some pretty dark places, and no one's coming to save you. It's all on you.
Yeah.
But why I liked that event was it was the whole team aspect. So, having those micro wins absolutely helps, but then the big lesson out there was just focusing on others. That was, to me, that was the big one. And it took us a while to really gel as a team, but when we did, it wasn't about you anymore. You were looking at the person on your left, the person on your right, making sure they're squared away. Hey, who needs help with what? And that serves two purposes. I mean, you get to help somebody, which is awesome. And then you're not in your own head. You're not aware of what all is going on physically, mentally, emotionally with yourself. So, yeah, that was a big one out there. Big lesson learned out there.
Yeah. That's gotta be a cool thing too. Like you said, not knowing anybody when you got there, and then in 2 days being able to form that type of bond with a group of people that you've literally met, at the start of the thing, and all of a sudden you're teammates in this deal and you get through it together. I mean, what a cool experience that must have been.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you've got those relationships that are forged by adversity, or you just go through something really, really difficult with a teammate, or even at work or whatever, man, it just makes those bonds super tight.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I had one more question for you too. I'm just curious, like you said, when you started the event, you had that application put in front of you with your why on there.
Mm-hmm.
Did that change at all throughout the event, or was it still pretty strong at the end of what it was when you wrote that?
No, a great question. So it didn't change. It absolutely, and my why, I mean, I'll share it, is at that time, the reason I signed up there was to become the best version of myself. And I wanted to be a better dad. I wanted to be a better father and husband. And that was really it. And I mean, yeah, there's other things you can do to do that. Obviously, you don't have to sign up for Crazy Crucible like Kokoro Camp to become a better dad or become a better husband, right? There's actually courses on that and stuff like that. But I wanted something that would just almost like shell shock. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna impact you. It's gonna be rough, but that's what I needed, because I like a little bit of that. Well, I like a lot of it, actually, not a little bit of it. I like the physical pursuit,
Mm-hmm.
And I find through physical pursuits, even working out at home, if I push it, or I'm doing like a gnarly WOD or some sort of circuit training, and you get to the point where you're gassed, like you're just, all you can do is breathe, really. It's kind of like meditation for me in a weird way. Things become clear. I think a lot of answers start coming my way, and I like that, though. Like, I want that feeling time and time again. And then I believe that the more you do that, the more you kind of callous your mind and your body to be able to take whatever it is life throws on you. So yeah, my why, that was my why for going out there, was, for my wife and kids and myself, to find out who I was. And it didn't change, because I, in my deepest, darkest moments, let's say, I would always go back to that. I really would. And I'd think about, well, what would my kids say if they saw me right now? Or like, what if my wife was right there? How would she react? Am I being a good teammate? Why do I mean, I felt like quitting all the time, but that's okay to have that initial thought come in. We're all human, but then it's like, you got a choice on how you act on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brad, if with thinking about of that as your why, and then like anchoring to that throughout the whole time, so what does that look like when you get back home then? Like, what kinds of things did you start to notice as a dad and as a husband, kind of taking the lessons of that back to real life?
Oh, the lessons learned, right? There were so many. So initially, I specifically remember getting home, and I got home pretty late. It was like midnight or something. So I went straight to bed, and I woke up, and I was just extremely grateful. It's funny what you take for granted. We all generally live lives of some sort of comfort if you live here in the United States. And I think we take a lot of things for granted. But when you go without food or you go without electricity or warmth, you become very humble and very grateful very, very quick. And I don't think I had ever had PTSD or some version of that in my life. I'm pretty sure I had that for a couple of days, though, just because of the constant yelling and just the stuff that we had to do. Right. I mean, I came back 12 pounds lighter than when I went out there. Yeah. I'd lost 12 pounds, and I looked different. I felt different. Mentally, I was just kind of like a soup can, at least for the next 24 hours. I just didn't seem to be as sharp, I guess you would say. So it really humbled me. And I learned to take different perspectives, that's another big thing. And then take time. Like, so one big lesson that we learned, there was a coach that came in to greet us. He was I don't think he was an active SEAL, but I think he had retired. He'd been in a long time. And he told our class, he said, you guys will be, I say you guys, women can do this too. Unfortunately, we didn't have any women in our class. I wish we did. I really do. Because, people ask me who like the grittiest person is. And I was like, I tell you, it's not a man, it's a woman. So I'll tell you that right now. So anyway, back to that class, we're being addressed by a coach. And he said, you guys will be successful if you can do 3 things and 3 things only. Just concentrate on these 3 things. And I'm thinking, oh, this is awesome. What is it? It says, breathe, think, and execute. Breathe, think, and execute. And I was like, okay. So I went to that a lot throughout that weekend, but that was one of the other things one of the many things that I brought back to my own lifestyle, was just that simple philosophy of breathe, think, execute. Or I've also heard it, pause, breathe, act. Yeah. So there's different versions of it, but just taking that split second to just take a breath before you talk or before you act can literally be the difference between you going off on your child or handling it like an appropriate adult, because we're all human. I mean,
Yeah.
there's times when they get to me, right? And they've reached that limit and they're way past that limit and the patience is gone, right?
Yeah.
I just find if I can just take some time to take a short breath, think about it, my response is much better than like my reaction, my initial knee jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
What's so awesome about that too is, I gotta imagine too, especially when you're in a crucible like that, having simple things like that to cue on, right? And no
Yeah.
different, like you said, than life. Like if you got these elaborate things going on in your head all the time, it makes it tough to make decisions. But if it's just these couple little things, right? Like think, breathe, execute. If that's all you set in your mind, it's like, okay, back on track right away.
Back on track, right?
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. It's awesome.
So Brad, then so you have these couple of lessons you noticed right out of the gate and you're seeing them in your daily life. How does the book come about?
Great question, Cole. So on my flight back from San Diego, I'd been up literally over 60 hours if you factor in, what time I woke up in the morning to prep and what time I had gotten back. So I had been up 60 hours. I went to bed. I stayed at my buddy's house. I mentioned him earlier. He's like, "What do you want for dinner? I'll buy you anything." For some reason, sushi sounded amazing. So he went out, bought this like expensive sushi, and I fell asleep in the plate of sushi. Like no kidding. Head boom hits the table. I think he took a picture of me or has a video of it somewhere. I mean, that's just how far out of it I was. And anyway, so next morning, I had to hop on an early flight, and I took out a journal. I did. I had a notebook and I wrote down. I said, okay, I'm gonna try and go back, and I just wanna I want to write down all the evolutions that the SEALs had us do. That was it. So it was just a nice little 1-page outline of the previous 50 hours, and I didn't touch that journal for probably a year, if not more. But what I noticed was I would recount my story to people. First, it was family, because they all thought I was crazy for doing this, and then now they want to hear, right, all the juicy details and stuff, and I'm like, cool. And then it was telling friends, and then I can't remember who it was, but somebody's like, you should turn this into a book. Like this would be so cool. And I said, I don't know about a book. Like who wants to listen to me? I'm nobody. I don't have a big social media following, or I'm not famous or anything like that. And they're like, no. They're like, I think people would like your voice, and so on and so forth. So when I first started writing it, it was really part of a legacy exercise that I was doing. And it really is just for my wife and kids and my family, friends, just a little leave behind, just to show people that, you're capable of a lot more than you think you are, a lot more. And we all put these self-imposed regulators on us for whatever reason. And you just got to break through it. You just got to take a chance on yourself one time, take a chance, take it as far as you think you can take it, and then take it just a couple steps farther. And it's going to really open up some doors. So that's how that started. And then I actually sort of fell in love with the writing process, and I don't love making the time for it. We'll just say, because I would do it. What worked for me was early in the morning, right? That was part of my morning routine back then. I mean, I still have a morning routine. It's just changed, but I would wake up, do my breath work, do my little stretching, drink some water, and then I'd write. I did that for years, but it was an on again, off again, love-hate relationship with it. Because like anything else, I'd get bored. And going back to, Angela Duckworth, when I took her grit scale, one of her questions was something along those lines of, when I'm working on projects, do I see them through to completion? And historically I hadn't. I was always the type that, like, I'd work on something, be all gung ho, and then you get bored with it, and I'd leave it halfway done and move on to something else. And I said, I'm not going to do this with this book. It's too important. It means too much for me. It's because it's not about selling, thousands of copies and being a bestseller. Although if that happens, hey, that's good too, right?
Yeah.
It really is just about leaving something behind that I'm proud of, that I worked my butt off on, and something that my family can hopefully glean from it in case I'm not around. And hey, if it can help just one person, then it was worth it. Really was.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a great way to look at that. It's, it's, I was thinking about that the other day. It's like so easy sometimes to get like wrapped up in like, you know, kind of like you said earlier, Brad, about like, well, what am I doing here? And just that concept of just that alone, if it just helps one person, right? And then maybe they take it and they share it with two, and then whatever, right? It's like, the goal doesn't have to be this massive big thing to have huge impact on your community or the world or whatever. It's kind of just like you said, keep it simple.
Yeah, I like that, Jake. You're spot on. Like, just concentrate on helping just one person, and then by grassroots. I mean, if you over deliver for one person, like, chances are they're probably going to tell one other person, and they might check it out, and they might tell one other person, and then you can slowly grow organically. And I think we've sort of lost a little bit of that in this day and age with social media, and everybody wanting to reach as many people as they can with certain messages. And I was like, that that'll come, but it's like, if you're putting out good quality stuff and taking care of your current customer base, it's like that's what's most important. You'll get that in organic growth, because people can see through BS. They know when someone's authentic or when they're not.
For sure. Yeah, the world of the influencer, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right.
Brad, something I love too that you've done with this book is take what really is a super gnarly experience. I'm currently training for the 12-hour version of what Brad did, and those 12 hours seem like a lot. So I can't imagine.
It is a lot, Cole. It is a lot. Yeah.
Multiply by, X factor. I really can't imagine. But the thing I love that you've done with this book is take what, are these a really gnarly way of learning these lessons, and then highlighting like, well, this is still real life. Like, these are the ways this shows up in real life, and not everyone has to learn it the gnarliest way possible. These lessons are available for all of us.
Yeah, Cole, you hit it right on the head. I mean, that's how the book's laid out. I mean, of course, I'm gonna tell you what I went through, what the SEALs had me do, and they called them evolutions, but there was always a method to the madness. So I share what that reasoning is, but then at the end of every chapter, I apply it to life in the eyes of being a parent, or a spouse, or working for a company, let's say, being an employee, because I think those are all general roles that most people have been in at some point or another, to make it more relatable. Because to your point, it's like, I'm not saying you have to go out and go do a 50+ hour crucible. All I'm saying is embrace the suck and challenge yourself, and go after, invite adversity to you rather than waiting for it to happen, because it's gonna happen. I mean, that's a guarantee in life. You're going to have adversity. It's a matter of if, it's when. But if you get used to being in adversity, day in, day out, then it's a little bit easier to handle. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it gets easier.
Well, and you also have an opportunity to recognize that it comes and goes. Like, when you invite it and you make it through 50 hours of a grind, the next time that thing pops up, you're like, ooh, I recognize that this doesn't feel so good. But guess what? Like, this is going to cruise by too, like, no matter what the suck is.
Absolutely. And then you'll realize, man, I can do this. Like, I've been through worse. I've been in worse situations. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because especially where we live in this country, that everything's kind of built to have no struggle, right? Like, we want to have this kind of perfect utopia and whatever. And so creating it for yourself is actually mandatory sometimes, so that when it does enter into your life, you're like, oh, I've been through something hard before, right? And it's not this huge catastrophic event that might throw you off for, months and months or whatever.
Jake, that could be a whole nother topic.
For sure.
softness in this country, if we want to call it that, but I'll leave it be.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yep. Yep. No, I hear what you're saying.
So Brad, you're what, already 6 years out from doing this? And
Yeah.
I'm guessing that these lessons and how you see them like kind of continue to unfold. Like, what do you notice as you maybe have more distance from that event, but still harness the lessons of it?
Something I've noticed is that even with like the one that I shared you with the, pause, breathe, think, act that I took you through, it's becoming more subconscious. So I don't have to really think about, employing certain tools or tricks or ways to get around certain things. It just kind of happens. Same thing with, I could be on a call with a customer and things are getting heated and stressed, let's say, but the first thing I do is I resort to my breath. I'm like, I'm not breathing. I need to breathe, take a breath.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now I know how to respond. So it's stuff like that over time, it's like anything else, there's things you can do to practice, to build yourself up day in, day out, to where you can literally handle just about any or possibly any situation that's thrown your way, depending on what your training looks like and what you're prepared to go through and what that life experience is. And yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought of that, but it has been 6 years. And I do really look at that as that was my turning point in my life, to where I really changed who I was and how I thought. That's not easy to do. There's a lot of people who are, of that, let's say, fixed mindset, to quote like Carol Dweck, who's got a great book called Mindset. But that was me too. I at one point had a pretty fixed mindset, wasn't really interested in learning, new things or hearing different perspectives. But now I find that that's actually what interests me the most. Like, I love it when someone's got the total reverse opinion of what I have, because it's like, instead of, battling them over their opinion, I try to like put myself in their shoes and figure out why they think that way. And man, talk about in today's world, I think if we could all just do a little bit more of that, instead of resorting to whatever violence or writing or you name it. Think overall the world being a little better place if we actually tried to help each other out a little bit more instead of focusing just on ourselves.
For sure. Like you said too, the understanding, right? Just put yourself in somebody else's shoes once and get out of that fixed mindset and just see what their, experiences through their lens,
It's a good it's a good way to practice. There's different ways you can do that, but like putting yourself in a situation to where like you're the only one around, like you stick out, right? That feeling. It's awkward, but it's great. It's great for growth, putting yourself in those situations.
For sure.
Yeah. Brad, I love that. Jake and I both kind of had this experience, but I love that thought that like there's kind of like Brad before Kokoro and Brad after Kokoro. Mm-hmm. I think the opportunity to embrace that that's possible at all, right? That we're not just this like conditioned version of ourselves, but we're so much more than that, is really a powerful message. And the other part you said that I think is important is like that initial phase where you feel yourself change. It honestly can feel like your freaking brain is sweating. Like my brain is working so hard right now. My emotions, like what I'm feeling in my body, like it can be so intense, but like the growth that comes from that discomfort is exponential. And so the opportunity to embrace it and just like go there, like that's like all the good stuff lives in that. So I can really appreciate that you brought that idea up.
I like how you said the brain sweating. I don't think I've ever heard it described that way, but it resonates with me. Absolutely.
I think you could actually even say too, Cole, that's hopefully for most people, that should be a mandatory thing they seek, right? Because a lot of us, I think in our adult lives, when you can kind of start formulating your own thoughts and where you want to drive your life and whatever, you almost do need to have that rebirth in a sense, right? It's kind of getting away from the old and into the new. And like you mentioned with faith, Brad, that's kind of a big thing with that, right? Of you're kind of there's a reset moment where you're like, man, I don't really love the way that this train's moving, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that's just by conditioning from life through being a kid and a teenager and into an early adulthood and whatever. And all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, I got to start thinking for myself here. And that's it. It should take a pretty radical change, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I think the military nails is if you, now I'm a civilian, but I got a lot of buddies who are still in, and any branch, they have boot camp. Boot camp is designed. I mean, they tear you down to where you're nothing, but then they build you back up because they want everybody to have that common baseline. Let's take away all the stuff. You don't really have a name, your number, and then it's great. What happens is really that's how the elite teams can get forged and so on and so forth. So
yeah,
I wish everybody, that was another reason I wanted to do it was looking back on, we all have regrets or things we didn't do. I think I talked about that a little bit earlier. And that was one of mine was not joining the military. I think I would have loved it. I'm not saying I'd change it now because I love my life and I love the lifestyle I have now. So I wouldn't want to change that. But I wanted to know what that was like, or just get a little bit of taste of like what boot camp might be like, to get torn down. I mean, I had done, I'd had gnarly baseball practices or something like that, but this is different, right? Something that's going to just completely tear you down and but to build you back up. And you're right. I wish everyone could experience like just a taste of that.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's what I'm going to encourage my own kids to do is I'd love to do some sort of crucible with them. I mean, how cool would that be?
Yeah.
I would. That was the other thing. I wish I would have done this earlier. I did this at age 35. I mean, had I done that at 25, I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah. There was a 14-year-old girl at the training that Brad and I were at right before COVID hit. And it wasn't, 50 hours, but you're getting sandy and wet for 3 hours on the beach. And I thought that the whole time. I happened to be linked arms with her when we were in the surf at one point, and she was having a hard time holding on. So I have her hooked in my arm. I have my leg wrapped around her, and I'm just like, you know what? Like, this is everything. Like, I wish I had had an experience like this at 14 so that when life contacted me, I was like, oh, whatever, we're in the surf. Like, let's get gnarly with it. Why not? And my son and husband are going to a Crucible program this summer designed for dads and like 13 to 15-year-old sons. So
Oh, that's
I'm pretty
cool.
excited. Yeah.
Yeah,
To
that's
see
great.
what comes from that. But okay, Brad, so I'm sure lots of people are going to want to find you and learn about this crazy adventure and all that you learned from it. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I know we've referenced it several times, but the book's called School of Grit, and you should be able to find all my contact information, all that good stuff if you go to my website, which is School of Grit, and it's .org, so O-R-G, not .com, but schoolofgrit.org. That's
Awesome.
the easiest way to find me. Or you could always send an email, which my email address is brad@schoolofgrit.org.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes so that everyone can head over there. Well, thanks so much, Brad. It's been awesome having a chance to talk with you and learn about this crazy adventure that you've had and how it continues to unfold and how it can impact so many more people now through School of Grit. It's really exciting.
Awesome. Now, thanks for having me, Cole. Jake, pleasure meeting you as well. And I really enjoyed this. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
for sure.
You. Take care.